Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, it's a month after the triggering of Article 50, and EU leaders, with the exception of Britain, met in Brussels this weekend to agree their opening negotiating stance to get the divorce process underway. Our reporter Emma Vardy was there.
It's inside this psychedelic chamber where Britain's Brexit future will be decided over the next 2 years. But there's a vast gulf in rhetoric coming from the UK and the EU, with parallel narratives emerging from both sides. Hi. There's broad agreement that an orderly withdrawal is in the interests of both sides. But Theresa May's position is that the terms of our future trade deal should be negotiated alongside the terms of our divorce. Meanwhile, the EU says the terms of the UK's exit must be decided before any discussion of a future trade deal can begin. But don't forget that €60 billion divorce settlement. Don't remind me, here in Brussels, some leaders think the Brits should pay even more. While in the UK, ministers say that divorce bill should be capped at just £3 billion. After you. Thank you. You looking forward to it, President Tusk? Isn't that divorce bill a bit high? Is this about punishing Britain?
We are very united. You seem also surprised, but it's a fact. So
how soon can we get a deal?
we have now first to wait also for the elections. In the UK, there are elections now. It was a decision of Ms. May.
It took an hour for all the EU leaders to make their red carpet entrances. But once inside, it took just a few minutes to agree the Brexit negotiating guidelines. They set out 3 main areas. The first phase of talks on the divorce settlement will deal with the existing financial commitments to the EU, the Northern Ireland border and the rights of EU citizens in the UK. They said a UK trade agreement can be discussed when the first phase of talks reaches significant progress. And that there must be unity in the negotiations, that individual EU members won't negotiate separately with the UK.
Like any good negotiator, and they are quite good here in negotiating because they are used to it, they set a maximum and then they will have to recede a little bit depending on obviously what the other side is prepared to offer. So I think there is a little bit of room for maneuver in some issues. But I don't think that some of the baselines kind of things are going to change that much. For example, I think that the European Union will not concede on the rights of citizens who are already in the UK. It will be very difficult for them to accept that there will not be any exit bill. And the question of Northern Ireland, I think, is very important as well, the hard border question. So I think these are, the baseline things are not going to move that much, and then you will have a room for manoeuvre in between.
On security and defence and the fight against terrorism, the guidelines said the EU stands ready to work together. And after lunch, friendly signs from some EU leaders as they gave their individual press conferences. Poland said the talks should open doors to new opportunities. And even German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who had earlier said some in Britain were deluded about Brexit, softened her tone, saying there was no conspiracy against the UK. Unity was the buzzword at this summit, and for once everyone seemed to be sticking to the script.
That unity actually is not just among the 27 member states, it's also amongst the institutions. So many of the divisions that we all have seen in the past at European level do not exist, and I think that's very, very important. And it's not a unity, by the way, that's directed somehow against the United Kingdom, because I think we all want this to be an orderly process, and part of it being an orderly process is that the EU side is unified.
So although there were no surprises here, what took place in this room was a significant step towards the real Brexit negotiations, which will begin soon after the general election in June. Said to be the most complex the UK has faced in our lifetimes.
Emma Vardy reporting. Isabel Stephen Thomas still with me. Isabel, doesn't the British media have to be a bit careful here? We would never take at face value anything a British politician tells us. We'd question it, put it in context, wonder if they were just bluffing. But we seem too often to take at face value anything a European politician says about these negotiations.
Right, and you only have to look at the front page of the Sunday Times today to see that. You know, they've quoted at length Juncker, and he was sort of rabbling on about, you know, how he didn't like the food at the reception and this and that. I actually think today the mood among Brexit supporting MPs is very optimistic. The key thing is that the EU Trade Commissioner has said we will get a free trade deal. And a lot of people seem to be willfully ignoring that incredibly big concession. That is what is going to happen in their view.
I mean, everything that's said at the moment needs a slide rule run over it. They're all in negotiating positions at the moment. Plus, they have, we seem just completely unaware that they all have their own domestic constituencies as well. Mrs. Merkel has an important election coming up in September. Euroscepticism is quite different from Britain, of course, but there's a different kind of Euroscepticism in Germany. She's got to deal with that.
Of course she has, which is why you're absolutely right. Nothing really should be taken too seriously out of the mouths of, dare I say, British politicians, as well as the 27,
that's my point.
Until I'd say October this year. We've got to wait for the French presidential election to happen, then the German elections. And actually, if you look between the lines of all this, you can see a way forward. The great hang-up at the moment is no trade deal talks until you pay up. But that's not quite what's written. What is actually written is no trade deal talks until we make significant progress on the money. And you could define significant progress in a lot of different ways, but come December, fireworks over the summer, we'll all get very, very excited about it in these very chairs, I'm sure. Come December, I think things will look a lot smoother.
Well, it may be December because the German election's at the end of September, but I've seen reports in the German press, depending how it goes, it could take up to Christmas before a new coalition government is put together. And the Brussels' long-standing negotiating tactic of nothing's agreed until everything's agreed, then I guess the British could say, all right, we'll agree a certain sum of money if that's what it takes. But that depends on then what good trade deal we now get. If we don't get that, the sum of money's off the table.
Yeah, and so in that sense, the two are going in parallel, even if technically they are separate and sequenced. Yeah. However, I wouldn't entirely dismiss what people are saying in their pre-election periods to their own electorates, because what they say, they have to some extent to deliver subsequently. And people like Merkel, of course she's campaigning and electioneering. Who wouldn't? She's got a tough election to fight. But she is measured and thoughtful, and when she says things like some of the British are delusional, that is unusually strong language.
But what
for
was she
her.
Referring to there?
I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
Do I.
It wasn't specific.
Well, cake and eat it.
Perhaps the cake and eat it.
But what is the cake? The cake and eat it bit came when they thought the British government was still going to effectively demand membership of the single market. That's not going to happen now.
No single market access and customs-free trade unless you sign up to the 4 pillars. I mean, that is the cake and eat it proposition, which they're right in saying Theresa May has made. But there will be a way around it.
But as I keep on pointing out, everybody has access. Even with no deal, you have access. This not be very good access.
But I think, you know, the other sort of side of it is, I think there will be a united position from them.
Yes.
And so, as somebody pointed out in that report, they are experienced, tough negotiators. So I don't think it's going to be quite as easy as some
I don't think
in the UK. The other thing is, I spoke to somebody very briefly who was one of those who drew up Article 50, who said to me they deliberately put this 2-year timetable in to make it impossible for anyone to even think about leaving. If you're right that we haven't got a German government till December,
then it's a lot less than 2 years.
This is really tight, this negotiation.
Easy it isn't.
I've been